Hey guys, Tarek, Merryface here, and someone commented about my hair. Yeah, I've decided to shave my head for a little while. It's doing wonders for my skin, not to get into too much detail. But anyways, this video is about the new Microsoft Flight Simulator. I've had a chance to play it for a few hours, and I love it. But unfortunately, I have to go back to work, so I'm in a hotel without my gaming desktop. Beautiful gaming desktop, by the way, that I recently upgraded with a 2080 Ti and a 10900K CPU, which is overclocked 5.1 gigahertz. But anyways, the reason I'm making this video is because I've been hearing a lot of complaints about the new sim, and some of them are somewhat justified, but others are just a bit of a lack of understanding. So I thought I'd get right into it and talk about some of the 6 main complaints that people have had about this new sim. See, the complaints are coming from a lot of people who've never actually flown real aircraft but have been simming for years. So they're experienced with flying FSX, P3D, and X-Plane, and they have thousands of hours on those simulators. So they think they understand the flight model. But the fact is, this new simulator has the most realistic flight model I have ever encountered. Now, it's not perfect, but it's phenomenal. First things first, they've added ground effect, which is great. One thing they haven't got exactly correct is the stall behavior. Now, if you don't have full elevator deflection, the stall behavior is perfect. It's really close to the real thing. However, when I tried doing the proper stall, which is to pull the elevator all the way back and then keeping the wings level using rudder and keeping the ball in the middle, the aircraft still goes into a spin. Now, it's a beautiful spin. It's exactly how it goes in real life, but it's going into a spin when it shouldn't. Now, this is something that actually happens in X-Plane as well, a lot earlier than in this simulator. So in X-Plane, you can't actually practice holding the stall, whereas in this one you can, as long as you don't use full elevator deflection, which isn't the most accurate thing, but that's okay. Now, the flight controls are actually really sensitive. So what I did is I went ahead and went to the settings and reduced the sensitivity by up to 30% in some cases, especially with the elevator and rudder, and that seems to have fixed the issue. A lot of people have been complaining about the scenery, saying that it's melted, it looks wrong, etc. Now, there's a lot of bugs, a lot of errors. You should report those to Microsoft so they can fix them. But sometimes it's because of people's setup. Now, they'll be very offended by that because they say, oh, I've got a very high-end PC or I've got a very high-end internet. But you need both. And if you have both and you're still getting that, then your last resort is to go and download the data locally instead of streaming it onto your computer. So to do that, what you have to do is go into your settings, general, and then data. And then you can go into the cache data. You can go onto the global map and you can select the areas you want to download and you can select them into 3 categories: low, medium, and high resolutions. And that should help you out in getting a better quality scenery. But yes, it's not perfect, but add-ons in the future will help sort that out. Now, I've heard a lot of complaint about the quality of the aircraft. Actually, the general aviation airplanes are pretty well simulated. I can't say much about the business jets because I've never flown one, but I can say that the airliners are pretty terrible. They look fantastic, but their behavior and system simulation is pretty poor. In terms of flying the A320 on this, I couldn't fly it. As someone who works on it almost every day, it's just so far from the real thing that after about a minute I had to quit. They don't simulate fly-by-wire, and some of the automation is a bit weird. Now, I'm not expecting a fully study-level system, but it was so bad I couldn't fly it. But as I said before, the general aviation aircraft, really good job in simulating them. They're not necessarily study-level, but they're close enough so that you can use them for training if you want to, or just bumble around and have a good time. One of the interesting complaints I've heard is that people don't like the new menu system, the new UI, saying that it's too complex or too gamey. So it is a little complex and it is a bit of a steep learning curve, but take some time to go through it slowly and try and understand it. With time, you will nail it down to an art and it will actually be really good. It took me a little bit of time, but I actually really enjoy it. I think it's a really neat modern UI. If you want, I can eventually make some tutorials on how to use it. Now, the complaint about it being gamey. Yeah, it's very gamey, but I think it's a fantastic thing. We have loads of new people into this hobby, and we need to make it more approachable. By having this very gamified UI, it's much more user-friendly, and it will bring more people into the simulator community. So I think it's a very good move on Microsoft's part. I think the main reason people complain about the new gamified UI is probably because they see themselves as quote unquote hardcore simmers. They like to simulate real world operations, and so they don't see Flight Sim as a game but as a simulator. And so it's a little bit of like a jab at their pride, or their simulation pride, their virtual pilots. And to them, I say, tough. I mean, the fact is, we're all people sitting at home on a computer buying game hardware to play a video game that, yes, simulates reality to a very high level, and we can use it to simulate real world operations, but it's nevertheless a game, and I don't think that's a bad thing, and you shouldn't let your pride be hurt by that. It doesn't degrade your learning experience any less. Right, finally, people are complaining about bugs and performance. So bugs, there are a few. A couple I've noticed is that the ATC system, sometimes ATC will not talk, but the text will appear, then they'll ask you to acknowledge the last transmission. And the other one was that if you're setting up your controllers and then you plug or unplug controllers, that causes the sim to crash. In terms of performance, a lot of people have been complaining about only getting 50, 60 FPS on ultra settings. Guys, that is amazing. That is the best a flight simulator has ever performed. You're used to first-person shooter type games where you need millisecond reactions. You don't need that in Flight Simulator. All you need is a smooth experience. I would much rather have 25 FPS, butter smooth with good VSync, than 120 FPS where it's stuttery and jarring. It just doesn't work. So 60 FPS is phenomenal, and I'm getting 60 V-synced on Ultra, which is great, but then when I start adding add-ons and it starts taxing my system more, I will quite happily turn it down to 30 FPS V-synced, and that will still be butter smooth in terms of what we actually use it for. This performance thing really comes down to people being used to other games and expecting a certain level of performance. The fact is, we're constantly generating scenery and constantly doing loads of complex calculations when it comes to flight simulators. So you just cannot expect the same level of frame rates. And frankly, you don't need the same level of frame rates as we have in other games. That's it for this video, guys. I think the simulator is fantastic. And I think it's only going to get better. We have a very passionate community who really want a fantastic simulator. And I think this platform is the beginning of a new era for Flight Sim where we get better and better add-ons. PMDG themselves have said that this new simulator is going to allow them to do things that they never could before with previous platforms. I can't wait for those add-ons to come out and test them out. I'm in particular looking forward to add-ons where they gamify things a bit, like FS Packs, Air Hauler, and that kind of stuff. And I'm also looking forward towards some amazing scenery packs, like airports, so I can fly out of Glasgow and Edinburgh, airports that are very close to my heart. This simulator is so good, in fact, that I can actually record videos with it, and that's exactly what I'd like to do. I'd like to, for instance, do the Courchevel challenge. Right? I made a video about that. I actually tried it a few times, and I want to change my recommendations because I realized that I had the challenge down wrong, and there are a few things that we need to change. So I want to make a video where I actually do it. So I walk the walk rather than just talk the talk. I'd also like to make some sort of short tutorial type videos, like for example emergency descent in a small aircraft. Yes, it is possible. Most people don't know how to do that, and sort of like more advanced aerodynamic topics that we can actually cover in this simulator because it simulates them so well, because the flight model is so good. Anyways, I'll leave it. I'm Tarek Merryface. I'll see you guys next time, and happy flying.